The sun was starting to dip below the horizon, casting a warm orange glow over the bustling city streets. The sound of honking cars and murmurs of people walking along the sidewalks filled the air. Among them was a billionaire, a man known for his cold, business-focused demeanor. He often stayed in his luxurious office, rarely stepping outside, but today it was different. He needed a break from the endless meetings, the numbers, and the fast-paced world that never seemed to slow down. His driver pulled the car to the side of the road, and the billionaire stepped out. The evening air was a bit chilly, and he adjusted his jacket as he walked slowly down the street. He didn't have any particular destination in mind. It was more about clearing his mind than anything else. He noticed the busy people around him, businessmen in suits, couples laughing as they walked arm in arm, and vendors selling snacks from food carts. The city was alive with energy, but something felt distant to him. As he walked, his eyes caught something strange. Near a pile of trash behind a small restaurant, there was a young boy, no older than 12, who appeared to be sorting through leftover food. The boy had dirty, ragged clothes, and his face was smeared with what looked like dirt or dried food. He was hunched over a pile of discarded wrappers, trying to find something to eat. The billionaire paused, his attention fixed on the boy. He had seen many homeless people in his life, but something about this child struck him differently. The boy reached for a sandwich that had been thrown into the trash, and just as he was about to take a bite, something unexpected happened. The boy suddenly screamed, his voice sharp and urgent. "Don't eat that." The billionaire, confused and curious, couldn't help but stop. He watched in silence as the boy jerked back from the sandwich and pushed it away from him. His hands trembled, but his eyes were wide with caution. The billionaire had no idea what to make of this strange scene. The boy looked around nervously as if he was checking to see if anyone had seen his reaction. When his eyes landed on the billionaire, he hesitated for a moment. The billionaire took a few cautious steps toward him. He had seen many situations in his life, business deals, crises, and even family drama. But this was different. There was something about this boy, something that made him want to know more. "Why did you stop?" the billionaire asked softly. The boy looked at him, and for a moment, it seemed like he wasn't sure if he should speak. He eyed the billionaire carefully, his expression still full of caution. Finally, he sighed, almost as if he had no other choice. "That sandwich," the boy said quietly, "is not safe to eat. It's been sitting in the trash too long. It could have bacteria or something else. People eat food like that, and they get sick." The billionaire frowned. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. A homeless boy, someone who had nothing, was warning him about food safety. The boy, despite his ragged appearance, had a strange confidence in his voice, and his words made sense. The billionaire hadn't thought twice about the food being discarded, but now, hearing this warning, he started to wonder. How could a boy who lived on the streets know so much about food safety? The billionaire couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. Here he was, a man who had everything at his fingertips, but it was this young boy, with nothing but the clothes on his back, who seemed to know more about how to protect himself than he did. Intrigued, the billionaire stayed silent, his curiosity growing. The boy, seeing that the man wasn't moving, turned his attention back to the trash. But the billionaire, for the first time in a long while, found himself asking more questions than he had answers for. The billionaire stood there for a moment, watching the boy as he pushed the discarded sandwich further away from himself. The boy's eyes were still scanning the ground, as if searching for something else to eat. Despite the situation, there was a calmness in his movements, as if he had done this many times before. The billionaire couldn't shake off the feeling that there was something more to this boy than just his appearance. After a few seconds, the boy finally looked up at him again. "You shouldn't eat from the trash," the boy said quietly, but there was no fear in his voice. It wasn't like he was warning him for his sake, but rather because he genuinely cared about what the billionaire might unknowingly do. His voice, though soft, was steady and sure. The billionaire raised an eyebrow, now even more curious than before. "So, you know a lot about food, huh?" he asked, trying to sound casual, but he was intrigued. The boy nodded, his eyes not leaving the ground. "I used to live with my parents," the boy said, his tone suddenly shifting. "We were a family that cared about food. My mom, she taught me everything. She taught me how to keep food safe, how to tell if something is bad, and what could make you sick. She always said the most important thing was to stay healthy, so you can survive." There was a sadness in the boy's voice that the billionaire hadn't expected. His heart softened, though he didn't fully understand why. The boy's gaze was distant now, as if he was remembering something painful. The billionaire could sense the boy was holding back, but he didn't press him. Instead, he knelt down, trying to meet the boy's gaze at eye level. "That's smart," the billionaire said gently, trying to acknowledge the boy's knowledge without sounding patronizing. "I didn't know there was so much to think about when it comes to food." The boy shifted uncomfortably, but the moment didn't seem awkward. "I didn't think so either, until my mom was gone," he muttered under his breath. The words came out almost too quietly, but the billionaire caught them. He had a feeling there was much more to the boy's story, but he didn't push for details. The billionaire stood up and took a step back, thinking for a moment. "So, what do you do now? How do you survive, I mean?" he asked, his voice softer now. The boy's expression flickered for a moment. He was quiet, almost as if he was gathering his thoughts. "I get by," he said simply, though there was a sense of pride in his voice. "People throw out food all the time, and some of it's still good. I've learned how to pick the right stuff. But sometimes, like with that sandwich, I can't risk it." The billionaire was amazed. Despite the boy's circumstances, he spoke with a kind of wisdom that was far beyond his years. The boy didn't see himself as a victim. Instead, he saw his knowledge as his strength, and it was clear that he had learned how to make the best of a bad situation. The billionaire felt a strange connection to the boy. He had never given much thought to the challenges of living on the streets, let alone how dangerous something as simple as food could be. But now, standing in front of this young boy, he realized there was so much he didn't know. There was so much more to life than his high-rise office and the wealth he'd accumulated over the years. This boy, despite having so little, had more wisdom and courage than many of the people the billionaire encountered daily. As they stood there in silence, the billionaire found himself thinking more about the boy's words, about how this boy, who had almost nothing, could teach him something so valuable. What else could this boy possibly know? And how could the billionaire help? The billionaire stood in quiet contemplation for a moment, still processing the boy's words. There was something about him, something that made him stand out from the rest of the people in the world the billionaire knew. Most people he met, even in his wealth and business world, were focused on getting ahead, making deals, or securing their next promotion. But this boy, he was focused on survival, and his understanding of the world was practical, grounded, and honest. The billionaire couldn't help but feel a deep sense of respect for him. He cleared his throat, breaking the silence. "You've been through a lot, haven't you?" he asked, his voice gentle. The boy looked up at him, his eyes betraying the sadness that lingered in them. He nodded slowly, his fingers fidgeting with the worn edges of his jacket. "I had a family," the boy began, his voice quiet but steady. "I had a home, too. My mom, she worked at a restaurant, and my dad, he was a chef. We were always careful about what we ate. Mom always told me that food wasn't just about eating, it was about caring for yourself. She taught me everything I know about food, how to pick the right things, how to cook, and most importantly, how to stay safe." He paused for a moment, swallowing hard, as if the memories were hard to speak. The billionaire listened intently, his heart aching for the boy. It was clear that his family meant the world to him. But something had happened, something that changed everything. The billionaire was curious, but he didn't want to press too hard. The boy seemed to sense his hesitation and continued, though his voice was quieter now. Then one day, things just fell apart. We lost everything. My parents, they both got sick. The doctors said it was too late. I tried to help, but I didn't know what to do. His voice cracked for a moment, and he wiped his eyes with the sleeve of his jacket. The billionaire stood still, unsure of what to say. He couldn't imagine the pain the boy must have felt, losing both his parents so suddenly. It was a grief that was beyond his understanding, but in that moment, he could feel the weight of it. I had to leave the hospital. The boy continued, his voice stronger now. There wasn't anything I could do. I didn't know where to go, and I didn't have anyone left to turn to. I ended up here, on the streets. I've been surviving ever since. He shrugged, as if it was just another part of his life now. The billionaire's heart went out to him. "You're a survivor," he said, his voice filled with admiration. "You've learned to take care of yourself. I can see that." The boy gave a small, wry smile. "I don't really have a choice," he said. "But it's not always easy. Sometimes people are too quick to judge. They think if you're homeless, you're just lazy or that you don't care. But that's not it at all. You just do what you can to get by." The billionaire nodded. He had heard the rumors, the stereotypes about people who lived on the streets. But seeing this boy, hearing his story, he realized how wrong those assumptions were. The boy was smart, resourceful, and had a depth of understanding that the billionaire admired. For a moment, there was silence between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was as if both of them understood something that words couldn't fully express. The billionaire took a deep breath, his mind racing with thoughts. He had never encountered a situation like this before, never met someone who had so much to teach him in a single conversation. He knew he couldn't just walk away. "Tell you what," the billionaire said finally, his voice firm but kind. "I want to help you. You've got potential. I can see that. You don't have to do this alone." The boy looked up at him, his expression filled with a mixture of hope and skepticism. "Help me?" he asked. "How?" "I've got connections," the billionaire said, his eyes narrowing with purpose. "And I think you've got the skills to do something more than just survive. How would you like to work at one of my restaurants? I know a lot about food, and maybe I could teach you even more." The boy's eyes widened, but he didn't respond immediately. There was a brief moment of uncertainty before he looked at the billionaire again. "You really want to help me?" he asked softly. "You're not just offering me charity." The billionaire smiled, a rare and genuine smile. "No, I'm offering you an opportunity. You deserve a chance." The boy stood there for a long moment, considering the offer. Then, finally, he nodded, as if a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. "Okay," he said quietly, "I'll try." The billionaire's heart swelled with a mix of pride and hope. He didn't know what the future would hold, but in that moment, he knew he had done something that could change the boy's life. And maybe, just maybe, it would change his own as well. The next few days moved quickly for the boy. After that moment on the street, where the billionaire offered him a chance to work at one of his restaurants, his life began to shift in ways he never thought possible. The billionaire had arranged for him to stay at a small apartment, not far from the restaurant. It wasn't much, but it was warm, clean, and his own. For the first time in what felt like forever, he had a space that was truly his. At first, the boy struggled with the change. He had never had much, and now suddenly, he had an opportunity he wasn't sure he was ready for. But the billionaire had been kind and patient, making sure he understood that this wasn't about charity, but about giving him the tools to rebuild his life. The boy was determined to make the most of it, even though he still couldn't shake the fear that it might all slip away. On his first day at the restaurant, the boy was introduced to the kitchen staff. There was a certain level of skepticism from some of the workers. They had been through their own struggles, and they weren't sure what to make of the boy's sudden arrival. But the billionaire had told them to give him a chance, and he made sure they understood that the boy was there to learn, not to take anything for granted. The boy, despite his nervousness, dove into the work. His knowledge of food safety, which had once been something he'd learned from his mother, now became his strength. He had an eye for detail, spotting potential hazards in food preparation and teaching others to be cautious with what they served. His knowledge of food handling was unmatched by anyone else in the kitchen, and he quickly gained the respect of his colleagues. He wasn't just a kid off the streets anymore. He was someone who contributed. It felt good. For the first time in a long while, he felt like he belonged. The kitchen staff started to come to him for advice, asking how to keep their workstations clean or how to tell if certain ingredients were still good. And to his surprise, the boy found himself enjoying the work. He was learning too. There was a lot more to running a kitchen than he had imagined. He learned about the business side of things, how to manage costs, how to deal with suppliers, and how to organize an entire team. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were days when the boy felt out of place, unsure if he was ready to step up in a real-world setting. He was young, inexperienced, and sometimes the pressures of the kitchen made him question whether he could really make it. But the billionaire had been right there, checking in on him, offering guidance when things got tough. The billionaire told him that failure wasn't the end. It was part of the journey. He reminded him that what mattered was his determination and his willingness to keep trying, even when things didn't go as planned. As the boy began to grow more confident, he realized that he had started to feel a sense of pride in what he was doing. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was thriving. And in the process, he had begun to heal, slowly but surely. The trauma of losing his family, of feeling abandoned, was still there, but it didn't weigh him down the same way it had before. Now he had purpose, and that made all the difference. At the end of each day, the boy would sit on the small couch in his apartment, his mind buzzing with everything he had learned. It was a lot to take in, but there was something about it that made him feel hopeful. For the first time in years, he wasn't just surviving the day. He was excited for what tomorrow might bring. The billionaire's kindness had given him the chance to start fresh, and he knew that he had to work hard to keep that chance. But every step he took was a step away from the life he had left behind, and he couldn't help but feel grateful for the man who had seen something in him when no one else had. It was clear that, no matter how tough things had been, the boy was not going to give up. Not now, not ever. As the days passed, the boy's life began to change in ways he never thought possible. The transition from the streets to a job in a restaurant was more difficult than he had anticipated. The luxury of having a warm place to sleep and food to eat was comforting, but the challenges of adapting to this new life were constant. Every day, he worked harder than he had ever worked before, trying to prove to himself and everyone else that he deserved this opportunity. There were times when doubt crept in, times when he wondered if he was truly ready for such a big shift in his life. But each day he pushed through. The kitchen became his new world, and he began to feel more confident in his role there. The other staff members, who had once viewed him with suspicion, started to see the boy's dedication and determination. He wasn't just the kid off the street anymore. He was becoming a part of the team. As the days went by, he found his place in the fast-paced environment of the restaurant. He learned quickly, picking up skills from his colleagues and finding ways to contribute in ways that were valuable to everyone. Still, there were moments of uncertainty. The boy had grown up learning how to survive, how to make do with what he had. But now he was learning how to be part of something bigger. A team, a business, a family. It wasn't just about himself anymore. He had to think about others and how his actions affected the people around him. But the billionaire had been patient with him, offering guidance without pushing too hard. One day, after a particularly busy service, the boy was taking a break in the back office, trying to catch his breath. The billionaire came in, offering him a glass of water. He sat down across from the boy, his expression thoughtful. "How are you feeling?" the billionaire asked, his voice calm. The boy hesitated for a moment before answering. "I'm doing okay. It's just, A lot to take in. I'm not used to this, working with so many people, dealing with so many responsibilities. I'm not sure I'm cut out for it. The billionaire nodded. I understand. It's a big change, and it's not going to be easy. But I believe in you. You've got what it takes to make it, and I'm here to help you. You don't have to do this alone. The boy looked up, surprised by the sincerity in the billionaire's voice. He had expected the billionaire to be distant, to see him as just another charity case. But instead, the billionaire saw potential in him. Something more than just a homeless kid with a rough past. It was a turning point for the boy. I want to keep trying, the boy said, his voice firm. I'm not going to give up. I don't want to go back to how things were. The billionaire smiled. That's the spirit. Keep that attitude, and you'll go far. Remember, it's okay to make mistakes. What matters is that you keep moving forward. The boy felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The billionaire wasn't just offering him a job. He was offering him a chance to rebuild his life. It was no longer just about surviving. It was about thriving, about finding a new purpose. From that day on, the boy worked even harder. He paid attention to every detail in the kitchen, learning new techniques and refining his skills. He started to take pride in his work, not just for the satisfaction of doing something well, but because he knew that what he was doing was leading him to something bigger. The team, too, began to take notice of his progress. They respected his work ethic, and he earned their trust. One evening, after another busy night at the restaurant, the boy was standing outside, enjoying the cool air. The billionaire joined him, leaning against the wall. They didn't speak at first, but the boy could sense the quiet approval in the billionaire's gaze. I'm proud of you, the billionaire said finally. You've come a long way in such a short time. Keep this up, and you'll go far. The boy smiled, a sense of accomplishment filling him. I'm not going to stop. I've got a lot more to learn, but I won't give up. Not now. Not ever. And for the first time in a long time, the boy felt truly hopeful. He had a future now, something to work toward. And he knew that with each passing day, he was one step closer to the life he had always dreamed of. The boy's life continued to evolve in ways he could have never imagined when he was scavenging food from the streets. Each morning, he woke up with a sense of purpose, ready to face the day and the challenges it might bring. As he settled into his new routine, he started to realize that the opportunity given to him was not just a second chance, it was a gift. For the first time, he felt like he wasn't just surviving, but actually living. Every day, he learned something new in the kitchen. His colleagues, once skeptical of him, had come to respect his work ethic and his keen eye for food safety. The boy became a trusted member of the team, known for his ability to spot potential problems before they became serious. He could see what others overlooked and had a natural talent for ensuring that everything ran smoothly. His advice was sought after by his coworkers, who admired his dedication and knowledge. The boy's confidence grew steadily, and it didn't take long before he was given more responsibility. He was entrusted with overseeing certain aspects of food preparation, making sure that everything was done according to the restaurant's strict guidelines. He wasn't just learning about cooking anymore. He was learning how to run a kitchen, how to manage a team, and how to think on his feet. The boy found that he enjoyed the challenge, even when things got hectic. One afternoon, during a particularly busy shift, the billionaire stopped by the restaurant. He watched from the sidelines, observing the boy as he worked. The kitchen was buzzing with activity, orders were piling up, and the staff was moving quickly to keep up. The boy, however, seemed unfazed. He was directing his coworkers with ease, making sure the kitchen was in order and that everyone had what they needed. The billionaire couldn't help but smile as he watched the boy take charge. He had come so far from the shy, uncertain kid he had met weeks ago. The boy was no longer just a survivor of difficult circumstances. He was a leader in his own right, guiding others with a quiet confidence. It was clear to the billionaire that the boy had found his place, not just in the restaurant, but in the world. After the shift, The billionaire made his way to the kitchen to congratulate the boy. "I'm impressed," he said with a grin. "You handled everything today like a pro. You're really becoming a part of this place." The boy smiled shyly, but felt a deep sense of pride. "I just want to do my best," he said, his voice steady. "I want to prove that I can do this." The billionaire nodded. "You're doing more than proving it. You're showing everyone what it means to truly work for something. And you're not just showing them, you're inspiring them." The boy felt a warmth spread through him. It was the first time he had ever heard someone talk about his work in such a positive way. He had always believed in the importance of hard work, but hearing the billionaire's praise made him realize just how far he had come. As the days went on, the boy's sense of purpose deepened. He no longer felt like he was on the outside looking in. He had a real job, a real future. The work he did in the restaurant gave him a sense of pride, and the connections he had made with his colleagues gave him a sense of belonging. He wasn't just an outsider anymore. He was part of something bigger, something that he could depend on. The billionaire continued to offer guidance, teaching him the finer points of the business. He shared his experiences and wisdom, helping the boy understand the importance of leadership, teamwork, and making decisions that would affect the entire restaurant. But more than that, the billionaire helped the boy realize that this was just the beginning. The boy had the potential to do much more than he had ever dreamed of. One day, after a particularly successful week at the restaurant, the boy found himself thinking about the future. He had come so far since that first encounter on the streets. He had a job he loved, a place to live, and a mentor who believed in him. But there was still so much more he wanted to achieve. The boy realized that he was no longer just working to survive. He was working to build something lasting, something meaningful. He was starting to see a future for himself that wasn't tied to his past struggles. The boy knew he still had a long way to go, but for the first time, he felt excited about what was to come. With every step, he was moving closer to the life he had always wanted, a life where he didn't have to worry about where his next meal would come from or whether he would make it through the night. He was learning, growing, and building a future he could be proud of, one step at a time. The boy's journey had come a long way since that fateful day on the street when the billionaire had offered him a chance at something more than just survival. Now months had passed, and every day seemed like a new step in a world he had once thought was beyond his reach. He had grown from the unsure, homeless boy who had lived in constant fear of tomorrow into someone who had started to build a future for himself. He had a job, a place to stay, and most importantly, a purpose. His role in the restaurant had grown even more important. The boy wasn't just a kitchen worker anymore. He had become an essential part of the team. He had earned the trust of his coworkers, and they had come to rely on him. His attention to detail, his ability to manage even the busiest of shifts, and his constant focus on making sure everything was done properly had made him stand out. He had become a role model for others, a symbol of resilience and determination in a world that often overlooked people like him. One evening, as the restaurant was winding down after a hectic dinner rush, the boy found himself sitting in the small break room, catching his breath. The hustle of the kitchen had finally come to a standstill, and the noise of clattering dishes and voices had quieted. He closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of the day lift off his shoulders. It was in that moment that the billionaire walked into the break room, a look of satisfaction on his face. He had been observing the boy from afar for some time, watching him evolve from a newcomer to a valued member of the team. "You've done an outstanding job," the billionaire said, his tone genuine. "I've seen how much effort you've put into everything you do. I'm proud of you." The boy looked up, his face flushing slightly with pride. It wasn't often that someone acknowledged his work in such a way. The billionaire's praise meant more than he could explain. He had worked so hard to prove that he deserved this chance, and now it was starting to feel real. "Thank you," the boy replied, his voice steady. "I just try to do my best. I want to make sure I'm doing the right thing." "You're not just doing the right thing," the billionaire continued. "You're showing everyone what it means to truly work hard, to overcome the odds, and to never stop trying." You've taught all of us something important." The boy felt a deep sense of gratitude. He had started this journey unsure of himself, unsure of whether he could really make something of his life. But now, as he looked back, he could see just how far he had come. He had learned so much, not just about cooking, but about responsibility, leadership, and most of all, about believing in himself. The billionaire paused for a moment, as if deciding whether to say something more. Finally, he spoke again. "I think it's time for you to take the next step. You've earned it." The boy's eyes widened, unsure of what the billionaire meant. "What do you mean?" The billionaire smiled, his expression warm. "I want to offer you a chance to take on more responsibility here. You've proven yourself, and I think you're ready to manage your own team. You've learned everything you need to succeed, and now it's time for you to help others succeed." The boy's heart raced, managing his own team. It was a huge responsibility, but it was also an incredible opportunity. He had never thought this far ahead, but now that the possibility was in front of him, he realized that it was exactly what he wanted. This wasn't just a job anymore. It was his future. "I won't let you down," the boy said, his voice filled with determination. "I know you won't," the billionaire replied, giving him a reassuring nod. "You've already proven what you're capable of. This is just the beginning." As the boy left the break room that evening, his mind was buzzing with excitement. The opportunity the billionaire had given him was unlike anything he had ever imagined. He wasn't just a homeless boy anymore. He was a leader, a mentor, someone who could shape his own future. He had a team to guide, a restaurant to run, and a life that was finally his to create. The boy knew there would still be challenges ahead. No path was ever entirely smooth, but as he walked out into the cool night air, he felt a sense of pride in himself that he had never known before. He was no longer just trying to survive. He was living, and he was determined to make the most of every moment. His journey was far from over, but now, it was a journey he was ready to face head-on. The boy had never imagined he would come this far. Looking back, everything felt like a blur, a whirlwind of changes that he couldn't have predicted. From the cold streets to a small apartment, from being just another face in the crowd to becoming a valued member of a successful team, his life had transformed in ways he hadn't thought possible. But it wasn't just about the change in his circumstances, it was about the change in himself. Now, with the responsibility of managing his own team at the restaurant, the boy felt a mix of excitement and nerves. It was a big step. It was more than just cooking food and keeping things organized. It was about leading others, making decisions, and showing the team that he could guide them toward success. It was a challenge, but it was a challenge he was eager to face. The first few days as a manager were tough. There were moments when he felt overwhelmed by the weight of the responsibility on his shoulders. The kitchen was busier than ever, and there was so much to manage: scheduling, overseeing the food preparation, and making sure everything ran smoothly. But with every passing day, he found his rhythm. He learned how to balance the needs of the restaurant with the needs of his team. He learned how to motivate them, how to handle the stress, and how to make quick decisions when things went wrong. It wasn't easy, and there were plenty of mistakes along the way. Sometimes, things didn't go as planned, and the boy had to step back and rethink his approach. But each time he made a mistake, he learned from it. He asked for feedback from his team, listened to their concerns, and made the necessary changes. He wasn't perfect, but he was improving, and that was enough. The most rewarding part, however, wasn't the success of the restaurant or the praise he received from the billionaire. It was seeing his team come together, watching them trust him as a leader, and knowing that he had helped them grow. They weren't just coworkers anymore. They had become a family. They relied on each other, supported one another, and worked together toward a common goal. The boy had become more than just a part of the team. He had become its heart. As the months went by, the restaurant continued to thrive. Business was booming, and the boy's leadership had played a huge role in that success. But it wasn't just the restaurant that had grown. It was the boy himself. He had learned how to lead with kindness and understanding. He had learned that success wasn't just about achieving goals. It was about lifting others up and helping them achieve their own potential. One evening, after the restaurant had closed for the night, the boy sat alone at the bar, sipping a drink and reflecting on how far he had come. He thought about the street corner where he had once sat, hungry and alone, unsure of what the future held. He thought about the billionaire who had offered him a chance when no one else would. And he thought about the team that had become like a second family to him. For the first time in a long while, the boy felt at peace. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was living. He was thriving. And he knew that his journey was far from over. There would always be challenges ahead, but now he was ready to face them head-on. He had the strength, the knowledge, and the support he needed to keep moving forward. The boy smiled to himself, feeling a sense of gratitude that he had never felt before. His life had been a story of transformation, of overcoming the odds and finding hope in the most unexpected places. And now, as he looked around at the restaurant, at his team, and at the life he had built, he knew that this was just the beginning. The future was bright, and he couldn't wait to see what came next.